it sounds really simple, but people just knowing that they're cared for
Mhm.
does a huge amount in building that trust and saying, okay, like you're more than a job to me. You're more than what you do. I care about you as a person, as a brother or sister in Christ, and I want you to flourish. Then there's like a, oh, okay. Like
Yeah.
you see me as a person. I'm so
Yeah.
thankful.
Welcome to When She Serves, thoughtful conversations that encourage and equip women who serve Christ and seek to lead well. We're so glad you're here.
All right. Well, today on our show, we're going to be diving into the absence of trust. It is from the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and Patrick Lencioni wrote this book, and we want to kind of go through all 5 dysfunctions, and we're going to start with this foundational one. So today, it's the redhead team today.
Yeah.
Shannon
It's gonna be
and
fun.
Grace are joining me. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi there.
Yeah, look at us. We
I
could be
know.
all sisters. But this book has been really pivotal in my leadership and really helpful. And so I wanted to kind of review some of the chapters and break them down. And he makes a bold claim. He says that the foundational dysfunction of any team is not talent, it's not vision, it's not resources, but it's the absence of trust. So why do you guys think that that is like such a foundational thing?
Well, I think a lot of it is because sometimes there's a gap between what you expect and what you experience.
Mhm.
So if you expect somebody to be on time and they're not, well, then there's that gap. And what do you fill that gap with? Is it trust that they're going to show up on time? No, usually it's suspicion or it's, oh, okay, I'm going to take that thing away from them because they're not meeting my expectations.
I agree. I think that expectations is so closely tied to trust. And I like how the author defines trust as being something where you believe the best of other people. You're not assuming the worst. And even in that context of like expectations where people might show up late or they might not meet the expectations that we had had, when the trust is built there, we have the understanding that there's a reason why they didn't do it, right? That we don't assume that they just don't care about us or that they flaked out, but they actually have a legitimate reason for not doing what they had committed to doing, which totally changes your attitude towards someone if you have that trust built.
Yeah. How many times does that happen like on a team where, you get going and you get stirred about like this negative thing and you have this like sort of narrative going in your head like, oh, they just didn't care about it or they just, are late to every single thing that we do. And then you talk to the person and
Yeah.
they tell you why and it's like they've had the worst morning in their life or
Yes.
their child was sick or something that happens. And so it's not always I think that's something that has to be grown in leadership on a leadership team. And there's some ways that we can do that, but I think it's not just about like, oh, I'm going to believe that you're going to get this task done. Like it's a deeper like confidence within the team that says like when I'm honest about my weakness, when I'm honest about a fear or a failure, I won't be judged or I won't be dismissed or I won't be like I can come to my team leader and say, you know what, I failed on this thing. And to me, that's like a really healthy sign. Like if I have somebody, we say in our ministry, like the only ones doing things are, or the only people that are failing are someone that's doing something. If you're failing, usually that means you're at least trying to do something. And so it's a really, it's a really good thing to have this trust.
And that starts with vulnerability, right? From the leader saying like, "Hey, it's okay. It's I make mistakes too,"
Mhm.
and not hiding them ourselves. And then that builds the trust in our team that they feel like then, okay, I can be honest about ways that maybe I've messed up or ways that maybe I'm just not understanding what your expectations are.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. We read these leadership books, and I don't know if the author of this book was a believer or not. I think it's just written for general leadership, but there's so many things about it that are so consistent with biblical leadership that is leading from the place of serving, leading from the place of relationship. And I think that that's where it's hard for people in, secular environments to get on board with this kind of leadership, because it is counterintuitive to the I have to get ahead, I have to be competitive, I have to show only my best self. And I can't show any weaknesses, because if I show weaknesses, I'm going to be cut from this team. But within the body of Christ, there is supposed to be the foundation of relationship that we're building on, not the I'm going to be the greatest in the kingdom by being the greatest, but by actually recognizing my weaknesses, recognizing the things that I'm probably not the best at, somebody else is probably better at. And so when we look at these strengths, when we look at these, tools that this author has given us, and we filter it through what we see in the Gospels with Jesus's leadership, what we see in the epistles with Paul's leadership, then I think it's really consistent.
Yeah, I like
Absolutely.
that. And I think as a leader, when we're thinking through like the culture of our leadership, when I think some red flags to look for is like when we're guarded or we're defensive or, we're quietly competitive. I think those are the things that like kind of suffocate the mission that we're trying to get accomplished. And so then you start to establish a fear, like an unspoken fear within your team. So if people leader, if people are scared to say to you, I failed, or I dropped the ball here, or I missed the mark, or I just frazzled this week. To me, when I hear that as a leader, that warms my heart. And I think we have to go first in that too, because I think I have to be able to say, no, I'm really weak in this area. I can't do that. Or no, I completely dropped the ball. This one's mine. This one's
Yeah.
my fault. I take full responsibility. But I wrote down some things that he said. I don't know if you guys have these too, but he said, here's what happens when trust is absent. The leader protects themselves instead of serving each other. Conversations become filtered, where someone's like, oh, I've got it. I've totally got it. And then you realize, like, no, they didn't have it, but why didn't they tell me?
Yeah.
If they would have told me, I'm the type of leader, I'm sure you guys are too, like, I can fix anything if you tell me about it. Like, just share it with me and we'll find a solution, not talk about like all the reasons why you didn't get it done, but we can like work through like, how can we solve this? So conversations become filtered, feedback becomes dangerous, meetings become performances, and eventually passion becomes exhaustion. And many teams, they don't necessarily struggle with like competence, but they do struggle with courage. And we want to give people courage, right? To step out and take a risk. And to me, that's exciting to see somebody that like scared to death to maybe make a salad for an
Yeah.
event. And then they do it. They step out into that fear and that unknown, and they feel safe there to be able to like use their spiritual gifts. And even in things that they didn't, because you remember how scary it was, right?
I know.
When you first started.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like trust is built not by being impressive, by doing things perfectly, because we can't, but it's by being honest. But it's by saying like, hey, like, all right, I'm going to take this step, and it might not be perfect. And then as leaders, we have to own that too and say like, it doesn't have to be the way we would do it. It has to be the way they'll do it, but then we build that trust because they're able to try things and then be honest with us about it.
Yeah. And that is difficult too, because there's one thing that I use. I don't know if you guys do it, but it's my own internal dialogue. And it's kind of like, is this mission critical? Is the mistake they made or the direction we're going in, maybe it's not my direction, but is it mission critical? Is it going to thwart the mission if that person's late? Is it going to thwart the mission if they drop the ball on something? Now, maybe sometimes it does, and then we have to step in, but not always. But yeah, I would agree. I think it takes courage to show your weakness. It takes courage to invite correction. So if I'm not allowing people to hold me accountable and to invite that correction, then how can I do that, to them as well? And it takes courage, I think, for team members to say, I don't have this figured out. Can you help? Like, can we brainstorm? Like, people will come right to you as a team member and say, can we just like brainstorm through this? Can we just talk through this? Those are all healthy things. Let's talk for a minute about why the lack of trust is so destructive. So I have a few things that I wrote down, and maybe you guys have some others, but I was thinking about people hiding instead of sharing. Why do you guys think that that comes down to a lack of trust, that they hide instead of share? Like when they don't feel safe, or they want to mask their weaknesses, or they want to avoid asking for help, or they just pretend everything's fine, Why is that?
I think we all, to some degree, we want to put our best foot forward. We want to kind of say, oh no, I've got this all together. But I think that's where the vulnerability of saying that, like, no, like Paul said, I will boast in my weaknesses.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, like I can't hold it all together. I can't do the ministry all on my own. It has to be through the Lord's strength. And when we're modeling that for our team, then there's freedom. But I think that when that's not being modeled, or when that's not being kind of put forth as the goal, then people start to feel like, well, she seems like she has it all together and nobody else is talking about how they're struggling, so I'm going to hide how I feel too.
Wow.
Yeah, I think when we think about culture, like what is it, a culture of grace? Is it a culture of performance? Is it a culture of image? And culture is one of those things that, like, we all have it, and we're not always diligent about examining our own culture. And I think sometimes we can be facilitating a culture that we're not even aware of if we're not examining it, if we're not diligent to say, that was an interesting reaction that they had. I wonder why they had it.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they didn't come to me with this. Why didn't they come to me about this? And instead of operating with them in a mode of distrust, it's a good opportunity for me to examine, like, do they feel comfortable coming to me? Is there a reason why they feel that they have to put this image up of having it all together? And if it is an issue of that culture, then it's more than that person that didn't feel comfortable. It's the way that we're operating more as a whole. And that is hard to, they said you can't regrow or change culture. You have to start all over again when it comes to culture. And that is difficult. I think,
Mhm.
especially if you're going into a ministry that's already been established, or you're operating with something that you're not necessarily in charge of the whole culture. But for those that we are responsible for the ministries that we are leading, I think that we do have the freedom to ask those questions of, do the people that answer to me feel comfortable coming with both the successes and the failures?
Yeah.
And if they don't feel comfortable with both, then as a leader, what am I doing?
Yeah. I think one of the ways that I have tried to build trust, because you can have that culture of perfectionism, which is the opposite of what we're talking about, when people feel like they have to be perfect on this team and be, high level performers. But when people come or there's a mistake, I'll even seek a person out. Or if someone says like, I totally failed, I say, good, because that means you're doing something. And I think that's a healthy culture to establish, that they're not fearful of making a mistake, because all of us in ministry, like, ministry's messy
Yeah.
and we make mistakes every single day. And so I think just realizing that and building that into your culture. Then when you have a word of correction, then I think it's like something where then if I come in and say, okay, here's a word of correction, or next time we'll try it this way, then there's going to be more of reception, because it's going to be, well, I know she doesn't, mind if I'm human.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good point too, is going to the person, because I've fallen into the trap sometimes of, all right, I maybe lost some trust in this person, so I just won't schedule them, but I'll go tell you that, hey, I
Yeah,
was kind
yeah.
of bothered by this, but I won't have that conversation with that person.
Yeah.
And then it, usually trickles down to them somehow, and then it's even worse. And then they've lost trust in me. And so I think it's really important to have those conversations with the team members themselves first and foremost.
I agree. And having an honest conversation where, okay, what's our goal for this conversation? Our goal is that we grow as a team, that we become more effective, that we stay on mission. These are the goals. So next time we go through this particular thing, we're going to establish some like ground rules to it, or whatever that correction is, giving them an opportunity to prove that, okay, wait a minute, I can grow in this. It's like anything we do, any spiritual gift that we have, we want to grow. And I think that sometimes we forget that on a team, that especially in church, like, it's discipleship. That everything that we do, our leadership, raising up leaders, it's all discipleship. So we all should be learners, constantly learning.
Right. It's discipleship and it's sanctification, right? It's both of those things.
Yeah.
And as just we're being sanctified as much as our those that we're leading are being sanctified. And so that formation of us becoming more and more like Jesus is being accomplished through working together as a team, through building that trust. I think for me, my personality is, if I lose trust in somebody, I just take it over and I say, okay,
Yeah.
I'll just be with myself. Instead of having that conversation, I've had to learn to not just be like, okay, I can't trust them to do it and I'm just going to take it back. Instead of just going through the process with them and saying, okay, like, let's go back and see where the challenges were. Let's go back and see how we can get this back on track. And it becomes an opportunity for more trust building to go through that, right? If
Right.
we're walking through it with them. Whereas if I just take it from them and say, okay, like, I'll just do it, even if I'm trying to sound like I'm doing them a favor, they feel that I don't trust them.
Yeah.
And they know that, okay, like, Grace is never going to ask me to do that again, ever again in the future. So I might as well just go find something else to do.
Yeah.
And for me, that's my biggest one. It's just like learning to say it's okay if it's not done exactly the way I want it to be done. It's okay if there are some challenges and some setbacks along the way, because this is part of the process of becoming a stronger team, is walking through it with them.
Yeah. And I think giving people second and third chances, if it's something that you really feel like, okay, this person is good at this, but there needs to be some growth, versus, okay, I think this person's in the wrong position.
Exactly.
And they're just maybe not gifted in this area, or this isn't their thing. Let me help them get to where they will succeed in something. So it requires some discernment on the leader's part to say, okay, what's going on here? What's the truth about what's going on? But if they're gifted and they're just not, maybe they're at like, on a scale, they're at a 40%, but it's like, no, we can get them to 60, 75% with good training. And that's the other thing, as a leader, taking that responsibility. It's like, I think it was Craig Rochelle who always says, like, if someone's not doing something, you have to say, I haven't led them to. It's not their fault. It's like, what haven't I led them? Have I trained them well? Did they get the proper instruction? Was the communication clear? Were my expectations clear? All of those things fall right back on me. Another thing that he said that is so destructive is real conversations never happen. That's kind of what we were just talking about, having a real conversation, because it doesn't mean in ministry that we're never going to have conflict or that we're never going to go through something difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it so destructive when we don't have real conversations? What happens in that?
I think people get hurt, right? Because then they hear that, oh, you were talking to somebody else about it, or,
Yeah, you had a real conversation with someone else.
Or there can be a level of, maybe in my own ministry, like a level of passive aggressiveness where it's like, all right, I'm not having that conversation with her, but she's going to kind of sense that I'm annoyed, or like you said, I'm just going to take that. I'm going to take that, And so I think having the real conversations, and I think every single time that I have, as much as I've been nervous and like, oh, how is this going to go? It's always better.
Yeah.
It's always better to
'Cause
just
it's
air
honest.
everything. And then they're able to tell me how they feel. I'm able to say, hey, here's where I'm struggling. And it's always better to have those honest conversations. But we get in our minds and think like, no, we'll just let it go. And then it just gets worse.
And you just described what he described, like shallow dialogue, where it's like, oh, no, it's fine. You did a great job.
Yeah.
And now I'm working on a different angle, that passive aggressive, like, I don't want to hurt her feelings, so I'll just handle it. So then hard topics stay buried.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't bring up any hard topics. Conflict stays really polite instead of saying, you know what, I actually had an issue and we need to talk about it. It's just not productive, and it's hard to grow.
Yeah.
When that happens.
The last one is the main effect of the lack of trust and not being able to have good conversations. And this would be true of any relationship that we're in, right? If there's an area that we feel uncomfortable of entering into with anybody because we don't know how they're going to respond, we don't know how they're going to react, we're probably not going to bring it up. We're just going to be like, I'll just keep the lid on that one over there. And we can avoid that topic. We could just talk about other things. But eventually that topic is going to come up. If you're in a working relationship with somebody, if you're in any kind of, closer relationship with anybody, those topics that you're trying to avoid, you're going to bump into them somehow. And you're either going to bump into them and back away, or if you trust the person, you're going to say, hey, I know that we might have differences of opinions here, but this is really important and we need to talk about it so that we can grow forward from it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you'll be able to have that growth. And maybe that person doesn't have the opinion that you thought they had. Maybe they're a lot more aligned with you than you had assumed or thought ahead of time. But we just will never know if we're operating from that place of fear instead of trust.
Yeah, and that's when collaboration starts to break down, right? Is you have this like low trust, everybody's being nice on the team, but then conversations stop and people are talking behind each other's backs. There's no real conversations going on. And so that collaboration, everyone starts working kind of independently, just trying to stay out of trouble. I'm just gonna be quiet so I can stay out of trouble.
Keep my head down.
Keep my head down and work. And then pretty soon you have this really, this unhealthy culture of this absence of trust. People just become nice instead of authentic, and it's just a really interesting thing that masquerades a lot of the harmony that could be on our teams. And I'm hoping that as people are listening to this, there's that realization of like, oh, I've been wondering.
Yeah,
what's going on in my
weird.
Yes, what's going on in my team, and now I can see that they lack trust, and that's a good thing to figure out, isn't it?
I was just having a conversation with a younger girl who's in our home group, and she was just talking about some interpersonal relationships that she has, and she's very conflict averse. Like she just doesn't want to ever have conflict. And as Christians, I think it's easy to fall into that non-confrontational. I'm just going to cover it with love.
Grace. Yeah.
Love covers a multitude of sins, and I'm just going to let that go. And yes, indeed, love covers a multitude of sins. And there are things that we are called to just let go, but there are also things that we are called to enter into because of the sake of the relationship, because of love. We say, I care about you enough to have this conversation that personally I would love to avoid. I don't want to have this conversation with you, but
Right.
because I love you, because I care about you, I'm going to enter into an uncomfortable, harder place with the confidence and hope that God is able to move us past it and bring us to a place where there's going to be growth on the other side. But I think, especially for women, especially for Christians, it's easy to slap that band aid of, like, it's just better if I don't address this thing
Yeah.
instead of having that confidence of saying, no, this is something I'm called to enter into because I care about this person.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think when we hear things from our team members, we shouldn't be offended. Things like as a leader, oh, I dropped the ball on this, or I need help, or because you could get annoyed at some of these statements. But if you hear these, take a walk with, okay, I have a responsibility to handle this statement correctly. I don't understand. Can you talk me through it again? I'm struggling personally and it's affecting my work. I disagree, and here's why. What do we say as leaders when someone's like, I just disagree with you. Can you share with me why we're doing it this way or that way? Those should be learning opportunities and not time for us to just go,
It's hard. It's hard though. It's hard.
Sometimes
It's hard
it
to
is.
not take it personally. Like, well, I explained it. Why don't
5
you
times.
understand it?
Yeah.
I know. But I think that's the vulnerability that then we as leaders can bring and say like, all right, yes, let's have those conversations. Let's talk about those things. Or even, on a Christian level, where if they're struggling with sin and they don't want to bring that forward because, oh no, then I'll lose my position in ministry or whatever. But it's like, no, we need to be a place where there can be grace and there can be forgiveness and people can feel comfortable coming
Yeah.
forward with the things that they're dealing with so that it's really dealt with and they can
Yeah.
get healing and then serve out of that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point you make, Shannon, because I've had people on my team that they were scared to take time off, like if they were ill
Yeah.
or if they were they needed just like a season out. So probably about 5, maybe even 10 years now ago, I decided that if someone was going to have to take a break from my team, that I made sure they knew there is a place for you here. Even if I have to replace you for temporarily, even if I have to find another seat for you on the at the table, like your position is okay. And what I began to see is that they began to trust me in like, hey, I need a season off. My husband's not well, or I need a season off. I'm just really going through something with my extended family, or, I'm feeling exhausted. I think I need to rest.
Yeah.
And then that being okay made it so that people could come to me and say, I really need to just take some time off. And then they felt like, oh, I can trust her. I'm not going to lose everything. And I think that ended up being really helpful. So what can we do to build trust? We've talked a lot of ways about how it's destructive, and but what can we do to build that trust?
I think a couple of things. I think when, the trust has been broken, or maybe like how I said, there's that gap sometimes, choosing to believe the best in people.
That's good.
I think that helps build trust. If you choose to believe that, okay, it's not that she hates me. It's not that she doesn't love the Lord and want to serve in ministry. It's that she was late or she got the date wrong or something happened. And so
Right.
believe the best and not assume the worst. I think it's coming to our team's defense too. If somebody else is saying something about them, like coming to their defense and saying like, no, I'm going to defend you. I'm going to have your back. That builds trust, I think, too. And then again, that communication, going to them instead of going to other people about
That's a really good point, because we can also turn our other leaders against people if we're not careful, because if they're complaining and we can respond in grace. It's what I hear you saying, and we can say to that person, hey, no, they might not have been thinking that. They could have been thinking this, instead of going, oh, I know, wasn't that so frustrating? And buying into that, and like, making them not like that person or not see well of that person. We can respond in grace, and then admit our own failures. Like, instead of that response, I could have a response that says, oh, well, I've done that 100
Yeah.
times, or I know exactly how she feels because I've been in that situation with a sick child, or, or not feeling my best, or just feeling, I don't know. Sometimes we just come into the day prickly.
Yeah.
I have, there's times where I've walked into my office where we're sitting right now and just said, I am not in a good place today. Confession time,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
What are some other ways we can help build that trust?
I love his list. I think it's on page 197. It's my Kindle, so I'm not sure. But he said, admit weaknesses and mistakes. So we've said that. Ask for help. Accept questions and input about their areas of responsibility. Give one another the benefit of the doubt before arriving at a negative conclusion. Take risks in offering feedback and assistance. Appreciate and tap into one another's skills and experiences. Oh, focus time and energy on important issues, not politics. Offer and accept apologies without hesitation. Look forward to meetings and other opportunities to work together as a group. And I think if I was going to add anything to that list, it would just be willing to take time, because I think whenever we have those moments of somebody didn't do what we were expecting, or they have a question, or there is some kind of challenge that has arisen, if we just brush it aside and say, oh, it's not a big deal, or oh, we'll take care of it later, we're communicating to them that they don't really matter,
Right.
that their process, that whatever concerns they have, whatever issues, or things going on in their own life, that we don't really care about it. And we're just going to move on to the next, in their mind, productive thing. But I know for myself, whenever I've taken the time to, call somebody or have them come over for coffee, or just spent time and given them what they needed in that time spectrum, they have always been like, I feel really heard, and I know that you care about me, and they're able to go forward from that with more trust built and just confidence, like Brenda was saying about giving the time off and making sure that they know that they have a place to come back to. I think just it sounds really simple, but people just knowing that they're cared for
Mm-hmm.
does a huge amount in building that trust and saying, okay, like, you're more than a job to me. You're more than what you do. I care about you as a person, as a brother or sister in Christ, and I want you to flourish. Then there's like oh, okay. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you see me as a person. I'm so
Yeah.
thankful.
I'm glad you brought that up, Grace, because I think that personal time with people really does build trust. Just when you get to know them personally and you can spend some time, it's difficult to spend time with people and to invest that way. It's not an easy thing to do, but I know that some of my closest friends are the ones that I work the easiest with because we know each other. When you only see 10% of me, you might be seeing that part that's driven, that's, I need to get these tasks done, but you don't see that vulnerable part of me that struggles with weaknesses, that wants to pray and seek the Lord and wants to do whatever God wants me to do. Like, if you don't get to see that part of me, then what you're working off of isn't going to be, fruitful. One of the things he said, and I don't know where I read this, but using values as our guardrails. He talked a little bit, I think, about like making sure that we have team values that we're using as guardrails. And I know we've done a podcast on internal values, just things that we think are important for a team, being kind, having good communication, written and verbal, being humble, not avoiding conflict when it's needed, things like that, that I think would go a long way, that we could use those values. And then he also recommended like having a strengths and struggles discussion, just maybe sitting down regularly with your team members and saying, look, I'm going to share your strengths and then struggles. And I'll go first. I'll share my strengths and I'll share my struggles. But I think that those honest conversations, I think trust is really built by honesty, don't you?
Yeah.
A lot.
Honesty and vulnerability,
Yeah.
being real and relational.
Mm-hmm.
I find the personality test so helpful
Yeah.
when I know when I know what somebody's personality type is. It helps me to filter their responses to me through like, this is not you just being like very contrary to me. This is just your personality. And so that for me, he lists it as one of the tools for building trust. And that for me actually is very effective, is knowing my
Yeah.
team members' personality types.
That is really helpful, because then when they come at it, you're like, oh, yeah, I get that personality type. They're direct. They're go-getters, or someone that's like a little more vulnerable, or, wants to just keep the peace. That is really helpful to know.
We've used working geniuses too, where like understanding if like not me personally, but my husband, he's a dreamer, an inventor, a thinker. And so that can be really frustrating to somebody that's a task person, that I just need tasks, so understanding how our teams work and then like, okay, I can do well with vision casting, but then who am I giving the tasks to? It's not another vision person. It's got to be somebody that delights in doing the tasks.
Can actually like cut the road that you've just macheted. Yeah, we're going that way. I don't know how we're getting there, but you're going to love it. That's the visionary. And that's the hard part, because there's some things where it's not even a weakness for me. It's just, there are things where you just want to shoot yourself in the head. And it's those times when it's like someone says something to you and you're like, that, you don't even know how low on my spectrum that is. And I avoid those things, so I could look like I'm avoiding something, and really it's just, I can't even lean into that weakness. It's so bad. Yeah. So I get your husband.
Yes. Yeah.
I get the visionary part. I just don't get the admin part. When people start talking about admin, I'm like,
that's why we have a team. That's why we have a team, right?
Yes. And that's why we appreciate. Is there other things that you guys had thought about while you were reading? We're going to be doing a 5-part series on this, just kind of going through some of the chapters and these other things that are detrimental, dysfunctional in our teams. But this one, I guess, is the foundational one, and they all build from the absence of trust. So is there anything that we haven't said that you thought, oh, I really want to talk about?
Well, I just had a verse that I read, 2 Corinthians 1:12, and I loved it in the New Living Translation. It said, we can say with confidence and a clear conscience that we have lived with a God-given holiness and sincerity in all of our dealings. We have depended on God's grace and not our own human wisdom. That is how we've conducted ourselves before the world, and especially towards you. And I think like that could be like a mission statement. Like, no, I've conducted myself with God's grace and with sincerity in everything I'm doing. And then my teams then can trust me, and then they can walk in that as well.
That's really good. Any final thoughts, Grace?
I think we covered most of it. But I love that verse. The verse that came to my mind was just the verse from Ephesians, where it says that we endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace.
Yeah.
And that word endeavor is a very active word. It's something that we have to participate in. It's something that we have to give some effort to. And the reason that we do is because people are worth it. At the end of the day, as people who are ministry leaders, so we're not business leaders, we're not nonprofit leaders, we're ministry leaders.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the people are the most important thing. And obviously, there are going to be times that we do have to, as Brenda said before, maybe say this isn't the right fit for somebody. Or we might have to say, we're going to part ways with somebody. But it should only be after we've endeavored to keep the unity of the Spirit and the
Amen.
bond of peace, that we've done our very best to live in peace with all people. And we've tried to build that trust. We've tried to build those relationships. And we recognize that at the end of the day, Jesus loves every single person, and he wants them to grow and be sanctified and to be discipled. And that's the vision that we're going for before we go for other things.
Yeah, I love that. We have to just remember here at the end that a team without trust can't be healthy, but a team that practices vulnerability becomes unstoppable. And we want our teams to be unstoppable because we want to serve Christ and we want to see the gospel go forward. We want to see people thrive in the church. And so these are really important topics. So we will, until next time, join us for part 2.
Thanks for joining us today on When She Serves. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and go to whensheserves.com for our conferences, resources, and cohorts for women in ministry. Until next time, keep serving Christ and leading well.